Please state your full legal name for the record.
Eileen Marie Delzell.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please describe for the court your educational background.
I have a Master of Science degree in Vocational Rehabilitation Counseling, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through a doctoral degree in Forensic Psychology from Walden University. I also hold certifications as a nationally certified rehabilitation counselor and a board certified vocational expert.
How many times have you been an expert witness?
While working for the Social Security Administration, I've testified as an expert in over 1,000 hearings over a 10-year period. In the family law courts, I have testified at 67 hearings and 2 hearings at the personal injury trial level.
How much are you getting paid for your testimony today?
My standard rates are $190 per hour with a $1,500 retainer. I do not charge increased fees for courtroom testimony.
Did you perform an evaluation on Mr. Bumble?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Why were you asked to evaluate Mr. Bumble?
This case was referred to me by the Honorable Billy Bob, State's Magistrate Judge for the District of Neverland. The intention was to obtain an opinion regarding Mr. Bumble's competency to stand trial under provisions of Title 18, U.S. Code Section 4241.
What legal definition is applicable to the referral question that you addressed when assessing Mr. Bumble?
The referral instructions outline that the defendant could be found incompetent by a federal judge if, as a result of mental disease or defect, the defendant is unable to understand the nature and consequences of the proceedings against him or is unable to assist properly in his own defense.
What procedures and/or tests did you perform during your evaluation?
This referral took place over a 30-day period while Mr. Bumble was incarcerated at the state penitentiary in Atlantis Ocean. My process is to review all of available records, including the criminal indictment and complaint, the incidences pertaining to his charge of murder, investigative reports regarding the defendant, and medical records provided by Social Security, South Pole Medical Center, and Neverland County Mental Health. I then interviewed Mr. Bumble multiple times, both independent from and in conjunction with psychometric testing. I then completed testing using psychometric tests of intelligence, personality, visual motor functioning, memory and recall, assessment of malingering, and psychopathy.
What were the results of your evaluation?
It's important to note that Mr. Bumble presented with a chronic and severe thought process disorder. So some of the testing results may reflect lower levels of capacity than he may actually be capable of. However, on an overall picture, these test results are considered valid. Mr. Bumble scored at the extremely low level of intellectual functioning as measured by the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. Subtests also showed that he has limited ability for verbal reasoning and comprehension and was scored at the borderline level of intelligence. Nonverbal reasoning skills and visual motor integration were also in the extremely low range. Working memory reflected difficulty and that Mr. Bumble would have problems holding information in order to perform a specific task. The objective personality testing identified Mr. Bumble as feeling fearful, easily frightened, and apprehensive. He demonstrated concentration and attention problems, memory deficits, and poor judgment. He is suspicious and distrustful, and also presented with strong urges to act in a shocking or harmful manner. There were strong indications for suicidal ideation and propensity for substance abuse. The final portion of testing showed that he has difficulty thinking logically and coherently and would have great difficulty understanding relationship between events and following procedures or consequences in any sort of comprehensible manner. Mr. Bumble has limited capacity for interpersonal relationships and is inclined to identify with partial objects or imaginary figures rather than people.
Why do you believe that Mr. Bumble is competent or not competent to stand trial?
Mr. Bumble is not competent to stand trial. He suffers from mental illness that prevents him from understanding the nature and consequences of the proceedings against him and is also incapable of assisting properly in his own defense.
Did you arrive at a diagnosis for Mr. Bumble?
Yes, I did.
What is that diagnosis?
Mr. Bumble is given a primary Axis 1 diagnosis of schizophrenia, paranoid type, chronic.
Can you describe for the court the reasons for that diagnosis?
Yes. Using the diagnostic criteria from the DSM-4, schizophrenia requires a finding of both negative and positive symptoms over a period of 1 to 6 months. Positive symptoms refer to presence of active symptoms of delusions and hallucinations. For this section, Mr. Bumble referred to hearing persecutory voices and having visions of demons, aliens, and vampires. He had further fears that people were trying to infect him with the AIDS virus and spontaneously stated that Saddam Hussein had been messing with him. Negative symptoms of schizophrenia refer to a loss of emotional capacity, speech, or motivation. Mr. Bumble presented with a flat affect, spoke tangentially and circumstantially, and scored poorly on all areas of cognitive function. This indicates that he does meet the diagnostic criteria for a diagnosis of schizophrenia.
Is that diagnosis considered to be a mental disease or defect?
Yes, it is.
Why or why not?
A mental disease or defect refers to dysfunctional capacity in cognition, personality, or functioning that impacts an individual's capacity for rational thought or behavior. These dysfunctions are present through Mr. Bumble's actions, behaviors, and testing results.
Do you believe Mr. Bumble understands the proceedings today?
Mr. Bumble understands the basics of what court entails, however, does not understand the procedures he would face in an upcoming trial.
Why or why not?
Mr. Bumble's inability to understand the connection between actions and consequences, his inability to track or follow procedures, does not meet competency standards.
So do you think Mr. Bumble understands what he's being charged with?
Yes, Mr. Bumble does have an understanding of the charges against him, but he does not connect responsibility for those actions, nor the procedures and consequences involved in a trial.
Do you think Mr. Bumble can work with his attorneys to successfully defend himself?
No, Mr. Bumble is unable to adequately provide facts to his attorney due to his extreme paranoia. Delusions and voices prevent him from focusing on trial matters and to lucidly interact with counsel.
Why or why not?
I just explained that.
Do you have any other information about Mr. Bumble that you feel would be helpful to the court?
I do. Mr. Bumble has an extensive history of multiple psychiatric hospitalizations and repeated episodes of psychological decompensation. He presents as cooperative in a structured situation, however is prone to digress into psychotic states, where his behavior is unpredictable and potentially violent. There are no indications of intentional malingering, and the defendant is not competent to participate in his own defense, despite his acknowledgement of the crime.
Thank you for your testimony today. You may step down.
Thank you.